Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Harvey here. Let me talk to you plain, because grown folks deserve grown folks' truth. I see that title and everybody leaning in, thinking there's some magic sentence you can whisper that makes a man forget vows, forget responsibility, forget who he's supposed to be. Let me help you right now. There is no sentence powerful enough to turn wrong into right without a price being paid by everybody involved. And if you're listening for tricks, you're going to miss the wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Harvey here. Let me slow this thing down and talk about the first truth you've got to understand. If you want to be powerful with your words and your presence, words only work when character and boundaries come first. I don't care how clever the sentence is. I don't care how soft the voice is. I don't care how perfectly timed the moment feels. If you don't have character, your words are empty. And if you don't have boundaries, your words become dangerous. See, people think influence starts at the mouth. It doesn't. Influence starts at the core of who you are. When a woman speaks from character, a man hears something different. He hears consistency. He hears stability. He hears self-respect. That kind of voice doesn't have to raise itself. It doesn't have to convince. It doesn't have to persuade. It simply states truth and stands on it. Men are wired to test what's in front of them. And the first test isn't about beauty or charm. It's about standards. If your standards are loose, your words won't land with weight. If your standards are solid, your words don't need decoration. Boundaries are not walls meant to punish people. Boundaries are lines drawn to protect your peace. When you know what you will and will not allow, everything you say carries authority. A man can feel it. He knows when he's dealing with a woman who has decided long before he arrived what kind of treatment she accepts. That's why words spoken without boundaries turn into manipulation, but words spoken with boundaries turn into clarity. Now let me say something that might make some folks uncomfortable. If a man is already committed, married, or promised elsewhere, your boundary is the message. You don't need a phrase to pull him closer. Your refusal to cross that line speaks louder than any flirtation ever could. That kind of restraint does something to a man's conscience. It forces him to look at himself. Weak men run from that feeling. Strong men respect it. Either way, you win by not compromising who you are. Character shows up when nobody is clapping. Shows up when opportunity knocks quietly. Anybody can act right when the lights are on. But when temptation whispers, that's when character answers. And here's the truth. Men notice that. We may not always say it, but we feel it. A woman with character doesn't feel easy to replace. She feels rare, and rarity changes the tone of every conversation. Words without character might get attention, but they won't keep respect. And attention without respect is expensive. It costs you your peace, your reputation, and sometimes your future. I've seen people trade long-term happiness for short-term validation, all because they thought the right sentence could justify the wrong situation. Let me help you. The right sentence never cancels the wrong choice. When your character is strong, your words don't need to chase. They don't need to hint. They don't need to beg. They are clear, calm, and confident. You can say how you feel without trying to control how someone responds. That's power. Power is not getting the outcome you want. Power is being okay with the outcome because you honored yourself. Boundaries also protect your heart. They keep you from attaching to situations that cannot grow into something healthy. A boundary says, I know where this leads, and I choose not to go there. That decision gives your words a different energy. Instead of sounding hopeful or desperate, they sound grounded. Men feel grounded energy as peace, and peace is what men are always searching for, even when they don't know how to name it. Let me tell you something else. When you speak from character, you're not auditioning. You're not trying to be chosen. You're showing who you already are. That flips the entire dynamic. Now, the man isn't evaluating your worth. You're evaluating the situation. That shift is subtle, but it's powerful. It puts you in control without you ever having to announce it. A woman with boundaries doesn't threaten a man. She reveals him. She reveals whether he's disciplined or reckless, honest or selfish, mature or impulsive. And that information is priceless because you don't want to be chosen by chaos. You want to be aligned with intention. Character also keeps you from becoming someone you don't recognize just to be desired. The moment you abandon your values to keep someone interested, you've already lost yourself. And nothing a man gives you is worth that trade. When you keep your character intact, you can walk away with your head high, knowing you didn't shrink to fit a moment. So when you open your mouth, make sure your life backs it up. Make sure your standards support it. Make sure your boundaries protect it. Because the most attractive thing you can ever say is spoken without sound. It's the quiet confidence of a woman who knows her worth and refuses to negotiate it. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Harvey here. Let me talk about this second truth because it's one people get wrong all the time. A man responds to respect, peace, and self-worth, not pressure. Pressure makes a man defensive. Pressure makes a man lie. Pressure makes a man disappear. And if you ever find yourself pushing, convincing, or trying to force clarity, you are already out of position. Men don't move toward pressure, they move toward peace. Respect is the entry point, not flattery, not hype, not pretending. Respect. Respect says, I see you as a man, and I see myself as a woman who values herself. When a man feels respected, he relaxes. When he relaxes, he opens up. When he opens up, you see who he really is. That's the chain reaction. But when a man feels pressured, he closes ranks. He gives you half-truths. He tells you what you want to hear to buy time. That's not connection, that's survival. Now, let me explain something important. Respect is not silence, and it's not shrinking. Respect is how you communicate. It's tone, it's timing, it's intention. You can be firm and still be respectful. You can be clear without being combative. Men listen better when they don't feel attacked or cornered. If your words sound like a trap, a man will look for an exit. Peace is the atmosphere you bring. Every room has a temperature, and somebody sets it. A woman who brings peace doesn't bring drama disguised as passion. She doesn't bring chaos disguised. She brings calm clarity. That doesn't mean you don't have feelings. It means your feelings don't run the house. Men crave peace because the world is already loud. Expectations are loud. Failure is loud. Pressure is loud. Peace feels like relief. Here's the truth. Nobody tells you a man will tolerate pressure from a woman he doesn't respect, but he will cherish peace from a woman he does. If he feels like every interaction is an interrogation, he starts bracing himself. If he feels like every conversation ends in tension, he starts avoiding them. That's not love fading, that's self-preservation kicking in. Self-worth is the quiet force behind everything you say. When you know your value, you don't rush a man's timeline. You don't threaten ultimatums out of fear. You don't compete with other women for attention. You don't accept crumbs and call it a meal. A woman with self-worth speaks from choice, not need, and neediness has a sound to it. Men hear it immediately. Pressure usually comes from fear of losing him, fear of not being enough, fear of time running out. But fear-driven words never land right. They come out sharp or desperate, even when you don't mean them to. Self-worth calms that fear. It reminds you that you were whole before he showed up, and you'll be whole if he leaves. That energy changes how your words land. Let me say this clearly. You don't inspire commitment by demanding it. You inspire commitment by being someone a man doesn't want to lose. And that's not about tricks. That's about consistency, boundaries, and peace. When a man feels respected, he wants to show up better. When he feels at peace, he wants to stay longer. When he senses your self-worth, he knows you won't tolerate nonsense. A lot of women think talking more will fix it, explaining more will fix it, repeating the point louder will fix it. It won't. Sometimes the most powerful statement is restraint. Sometimes it's letting silence do the teaching. Men pay attention when access changes, not as a game, but as a natural consequence of standards. Respect also means respecting yourself enough not to pressure a man into being something he isn't ready or willing to be. If a man is confused, pressure won't clarify him. It will only make him defensive. Peace gives him space to reveal his true intentions, and that information is more valuable than any promise forced out of him. Self-worth also means you don't personalize a man's inability to show up. His readiness is not your resume. You don't pressure someone to choose you when you already chose yourself. That's backwards. When you know who you are, you let a man rise to meet you or fall away without chaos. Let me tell you what pressure sounds like to a man. It sounds like control. It sounds like expectations without agreement. It sounds like being managed instead of appreciated. Even good men resist that. But respect sounds like partnership. Peace sounds like safety. Self-worth sounds like confidence. Those three together create an environment where a man wants to invest. And here's the part that matters most. When you stop pressuring outcomes, you start seeing reality. You see whether a man is capable of honoring you. You see whether he values peace or prefers chaos. You see whether he respects boundaries or pushes against them. Pressure hides the truth. Peace reveals it. So watch how your words feel, not just how they sound. Ask yourself if they're coming from fear or confidence, from urgency or assurance, from pressure or peace. Because men don't fall in love with demands. They fall in love with how they feel when they're with you. And respect, peace, and self-worth make a man feel like he's in the right place, not a tight spot. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Harvey here. Let me talk to you about this third truth, because this is where people really get confused. Desire grows from how you make a man feel about himself, not from manipulation. Manipulation is short-term. Feelings are long-term. Manipulation might get attention, but feelings create attachment. And if you don't understand the difference, you'll keep attracting moments instead of commitment. Men don't fall for lines, they fall for experiences. A man remembers how he feels in your presence long after he forgets the words you said. He remembers whether he felt respected, calm, confident, appreciated, or judged. That emotional memory is what pulls him back. You can't talk your way into that. You create it by who you are and how you interact. Manipulation tries to control outcomes. It uses guilt, jealousy, comparison, or fear to push a man in a direction. And let me tell you something. Men can feel that pressure even when it's subtle. The moment a man senses he's being steered instead of understood, something in him resists. He might still engage, but his guard goes up. And once a man's guard is up, his heart is closed. When a woman focuses on how a man feels about himself around her, everything changes. If he feels competent, he leans in. If he feels appreciated, he opens up. If he feels trusted, he steps up. Men want to feel like men, not controlled, not corrected, not constantly evaluated. When a woman allows a man to show up in his strength, he wants to protect that space. Now listen carefully. This does not mean flattery. This does not mean pretending. This does not mean boosting his ego while shrinking yourself. Real emotional influence comes from authenticity. It comes from allowing a man to be himself without fear of ridicule or constant criticism. Men don't connect where they feel small. They connect where they feel safe. Manipulation often shows up as strategy. Timing texts, withholding affection as punishment, saying things just to provoke a reaction. All of that might get a response, but it won't get devotion. A man might react, but he won't relax. And love doesn't grow where tension lives. When a man feels good about himself around you, he associates that feeling, ng, with you. Your presence becomes peace, encouragement, and affirmation. That's not something you say. It's something he feels. And feelings don't argue back. Feelings don't need convincing. They just exist. A woman who understands this doesn't compete. She doesn't compare herself to other women. She doesn't try to prove she's better. She lets her energy speak. She listens. She responds instead of reacts. She creates conversations that leave a man feeling clearer, not confused. That kind of emotional environment is rare, and men notice rare. Let me be real with you. A man will walk away from manipulation, but he will wrestle with feelings. He might fight them. He might deny them, but he won't forget them. And that's why manipulation always loses in the long run. It doesn't stick. It fades once the tactic is exposed. How you make a man feel about himself also reveals how you see yourself. If you're constantly trying to manage his emotions, it usually means you're not secure in your own. But when you're grounded, you don't need control. You offer presence. You offer honesty. You offer stability. And stability is magnetic. Men want to feel chosen, not trapped. Manipulation traps. Emotional connection invites. One creates resistance, the other creates willingness. When a man chooses you because he feels better in your presence, that choice is real. When he chooses you because he's cornered, that choice is temporary. Let me say this plainly. You don't win by outsmarting a man. You win by being someone he feels aligned with. Alignment feels natural. It doesn't rush. It doesn't force. It doesn't have to convince. It flows. And when a man feels aligned, he shows up without being chased. This is also why trying to pull a man away from commitments through clever words never ends well. You might spark curiosity, but you won't create peace. And men eventually choose peace, always, even if it takes them a while to admit it. A woman who focuses on feelings instead of manipulation knows when to speak and when to be still. She knows that her consistency matters more than her intensity. She knows that emotional safety builds trust, and trust builds desire. Not the loud kind of desire, but the deep kind that lasts. So if you want influence, don't look for tricks. Look at your energy. Look at how people feel when they leave a conversation with you. Do they feel lighter or heavier? Do they feel respected or reduced? Do they feel encouraged or evaluated? That answer tells you everything. Because at the end of the day, men don't give their hearts to strategies. They give their hearts to spaces where they feel understood, valued, and at peace. And that kind of desire can't be manufactured. It has to be lived. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Harvey here. Let me give you this fourth truth straight up, because this is where wisdom has to override desire. Integrity decides the outcome. What's wrong won't turn right just because you say the right thing. I don't care how strong the attraction feels. I don't care how deep the connection seems, and I don't care how convincing the words sound. Integrity is the referee in every situation, and it always makes the final call. People love to believe that feelings excuse behavior. They don't. Feelings explain behavior, but integrity governs it. When integrity is missing, confusion shows up, secrets show up, anxiety shows up. And no relationship built in that environment can ever feel safe, no matter how passionate it starts. You can't relax where you had to sneak to get in. A man who is willing to cross lines with you will eventually cross lines on you. That's not pessimism. That's pattern recognition. Integrity is not selective. You don't get to be honorable in public and reckless in private without consequences. And those consequences don't show up immediately. They show up later, when emotions have settled and reality starts collecting receipts. Here's what people misunderstand. Integrity is not about rules. It's about alignment. It's about your actions matching your values. When those two are out of sync, stress enters the room. You might call it excitement at first, but your body knows the difference. Your spirit knows the difference. That's why situations that lack integrity always feel unstable, no matter how thrilling they seem at the start. A man with integrity doesn't need convincing to do the right thing. And a man without integrity can't be persuaded into being right long term. You see and influence behavior for a moment, but you can't install character with a sentence. If a man is married, committed, or bound by promises, integrity is the boundary that keeps everyone honest. When that boundary is ignored, everybody loses something, even if it takes time to see it. Let me tell you something important. Integrity protects you from becoming a version of yourself you don't recognize. Once you start justifying one small compromise, the next one gets easier, then another. And before you know it, you're explaining behavior you swore you'd never accept. Integrity stops that slide. It says, I know who I am, and I'm not trading that for attention. People think integrity limits their options. It doesn't. It refines them. It filters out chaos before chaos gets comfortable. When you stand on integrity, you don't have to worry about who's watching or what might be exposed because your story is clean. Peace comes from that, and peace is priceless. Men feel integrity even when they resist it. It confronts them. It forces a mirror in front of their choices. Some men will step up when faced with that mirror. Others will walk away. Both outcomes are information. and information is protection. Integrity doesn't guarantee you get the person you want. It guarantees you don't lose yourself chasing them. What's wrong can feel right for a season, but seasons change. And when they do, the foundation is what matters. Anything built on secrecy has to be maintained with secrecy. Anything built on broken trust requires constant repair. That's exhausting. Integrity builds something you don't have to manage. You just have to maintain honesty. Let me say this clearly. Attraction without integrity turns into anxiety. You start wondering where you stand. You start questioning promises. You start living in hypotheticals instead of certainty. Integrity replaces that with clarity. You may not like the answer, but at least you have the truth. And truth, even when it hurts, heals faster than lies that feel good. Integrity also decides how a situation ends. When things fall apart, and many do, you want to be able to walk away without shame, without hiding, without rewriting history to sleep at night. Integrity lets you leave clean. It lets you look back and say, I handled that with class. That matters more than people realize. A woman with integrity doesn't compete with another woman's vows. She doesn't bargain with someone else's commitment. She doesn't build happiness on somebody else's pain. That kind of strength isn't loud, but it's powerful. It attracts men who are ready, available, and capable of honoring what they choose. And let me tell you something about men. Deep down, men respect integrity even when it denies them access. They may feel disappointed, but they also feel respect. And respect lasts longer than desire driven by secrecy. Respect is what turns into trust. And trust is what builds real love. So understand this. No phrase, no tone, no timing can override integrity without a cost. And that cost always shows up, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. The smartest move isn't finding the perfect words. It's choosing the right path. Because when integrity leads, the outcome may take longer, but it arrives without regret.